Hello. This video is going to be a long one because I want to make sure that all the information that I bring forward here is both factual as possible and has documentation to back it up. As a result of this, I would like to ask that you all bear with me for the duration of this video, as what I'm going to be talking about today is very important both to myself and to many of my peers. Before we get started, I would like to preface this video with some important information. First, I want it to be understood that this was not my first avenue to take when it came to this situation, nor is it my second. This will be explained in detail throughout the video, but I first tried to contact the leadership of the team about these problems on April 20th, 2023, by submitting a letter that I had written with another member of the team, who requested to remain anonymous for this video specifically. After this, when additional problems arose, I contacted the owner of Prefortress 2 directly on May 4th, 2023, both to request access back onto the dev server after I finished my leave of absence, and to confront the situation that had taken place on the 1st of the month, wherein which the other member of the team that I had written the letter with was removed from the team without a proper explanation given to them, as well as me being removed from the GitHub of the mod without any explanation whatsoever. I continued to ask for an explanation on the 5th and 6th without receiving as much as an acknowledgement of my messages. On the 7th, I was finally given an acknowledgement, at which point I had asked for my videos to be removed from the official YouTube, as said videos were personal projects that I made for my own YouTube channel, not for the official Prefortress 2 YouTube, and were only on there with my explicit permission. 5 days later, I was told that the owner had finally read my messages. On May 24th, 2023, I was finally given a response, which I will be sharing at the end of the video. Second, I want it to be understood that the issues being brought up in this video are not based exclusively upon anecdotal situations, but are about a notable trend that I and numerous other users have noticed about the behavior of the leadership to the mod, as well as their refusal to acknowledge and confront the problems directly. I'm putting this in here because I suspect that if I don't, some members of the team's leadership will attempt to use anecdotal situations in order to discredit myself and others like me. I'm sure that if they dig long enough, they'll be able to find dozens of moments where I've interrupted others or have gotten angry in situations than was warranted, or anything similar to that. Likewise, as the former dedicated playtest recorder, I could likely find dozens, if not hundreds, of situations in the playtest from the last 2 years of the same situations. The point of this video, however, is not to bring up and complain about isolated incidents. It is to highlight the fact that these sorts of incidents keep occurring in spite of the efforts of myself and others to bring attention to them and get the leadership to change their ways. Finally, I want it to be understood that this video is not made to insinuate that everyone who is working on Prefortress 2 is evil or anything like that. Most members of the team are perfectly agreeable and respectful people who just want to work on the mod together. This video isn't even made to insinuate that the entirety of the leadership and senior staff are responsible for the problems on the team. The individuals I am highlighting in this video are Sour Danny, the mod's owner, Sploink, the gameplay lead, who has also gone by the usernames Basil and Wendy with an IE in the past, Dead Thing, the programming lead, and Christopher, a senior developer who has also previously gone by the username Private Polygon. I wanted to mention one more thing that I failed to mention in the initial recording for this video, and that is that I at no point intentionally misname, deadname, or misgender any individual in this video. The reason why I bring up the other online usernames for these people is so that it can be better understood who these individuals are if you know them by alternate usernames. And if I at any point misgender any individuals in this video, it is only being done because I am unaware of what pronouns they use. I'm not doing it intentionally. I would never do that intentionally. So I just wanted to make sure that that is also understood. So now that the information is out of the way, here's the claim that I'm making. Prefortress 2's leadership is ableist and picks favorites. They have proven that they are unable or unwilling to consider their own actions and behaviors as something that needs to change for the good of the team. They refuse to communicate openly with members of the team, choosing instead to talk behind their backs and make decisions about them without ever opening up a conversation about them. These are some very bold claims I'm making about the leadership of the team, and I'm not making them lightly. Because of this, I'm going to spend this video explaining myself to the best of my capabilities as to why I believe these claims are true. Let me start off with who I am and why I have the right to make these kinds of claims. So, my name is Wolfclock. I've been a developer on Prefortress 2 since December of 2019. I first joined the project after hearing about it from Tyler McVicker, who had done a video on the project near the end of 2019. And I joined either during or slightly after Update 0.5's development. I was a developer on the team during 0.6, 0.7, and 0.7.1's development cycles. I created the old grenade pickup model, the 2 light control point model, the chicken model, the arena version of Well, and the UV unwrapped for many of the 0.7 gameplay models. I'm also neurodivergent. I have diagnosed ADHD, and as of last month, I am medicated for my condition. The reason why I bring this up in this section is because it is going to be very important to this as a point of discussion throughout the video. During my time on the team, I have been the subject of multiple situations where I was attacked or ridiculed or made fun of as a result of my condition by the team's leadership. The most recent incident that occurred happened on April 16th of 2023, and is what kicked off everything that is going to be discussed in this video. Following that incident, which I will explain in detail shortly, I began talking with other members of the team, both current and former, about how they have been treated by the leadership of the mod team. After these discussions, I wrote an 8-page letter to the team's leadership expressing my concerns, the things that they have done to myself and others, the reasoning behind why the things they have done were hurtful, and concluded with a call to action, that the leadership begins to change their behavior for the betterment of the team. I am now going to read to you all a modified version of the letter that I had sent to the leads. This version has been modified to redact the name of my co-writer, who asked to remain anonymous. It has also added a couple of clarifications in some points, and has redacted a few other names of individuals who I do not want to get involved in this situation. Note: this version of the letter has been modified from the original version sent to the leads, as it was requested that I censor some of the names and add an addendum to Wendy's section regarding the leads forcing her friends to block her. All instances of senior developer refer to the same person, who asked for their name to be censored. This is the same person who had helped me write this letter, and had included a section near the end. Hello, this is Wolfclock. This letter is addressed to all of the leads and upper staff of the Prefortress 2 development team. Myself and many other current and former members of the dev team whom I've spoken to would like to share our concerns regarding how the team is being led, and how many of the team leads and senior developers have behaved towards the other developers, contributors, and playtesters for the game. Section 1, the reason for this letter. To start this letter off, I would like to first showcase the catalyst behind this letter, and then detail many other situations that have occurred on the team over the course of the past several months. On the night of April 16th, a discussion was opened on the dev Discord regarding the concern of our game being used as a platform for dangerous users, and how we could address a potential scenario where said users could get a foothold in our mod space. This conversation generally consisted of considerations of what could be done in the case of such a scenario occurring, as well as what should be done. And the discussion generally broke into two sides between several members of the team leads and upper developers, especially Sploink, Deadthing, and Christopher, and several members of the general development team, especially myself, NeoTF, and senior developer. I have saved the majority of the discussion, except for image files, to a text document. However, the discussion took place in the server channel between 6:51 p.m. CST and approximately 9:35 p.m. CST of the aforementioned date, April 16th. The situation I would like to draw attention to was during this conversation. To highlight the potential dangers of the community, I stated at 9:03 p.m. that an unknown member of the community had attempted to dox me the prior week, and continued with this by mentioning my previous 2 dox attempts, which had both come from members of the TF2 modding community. Said attempts coming from an individual I have not met before named doxing user 1, I've censored these, and the known individual doxing user 2, both of whom are members of the TF2 modding sphere. In response to these statements, I believe specifically to the message, hard to ignore someone when they just threaten to swat you and then you get 6 emails that someone tried to log into your various accounts, Sploink sent this message to the chat at 9:31 p.m. If the image is not loading, here's a description of the image. A middle school styled internet safety poster titled 8 Tips to Stay Safe Online. This was an extremely disrespectful and offensive post to have sent to me. The reasons why are as follows. 1. I have ADHD, a fact that Sploink was either well aware of or should have been well aware of at the time of posting, if not as early as November 6, 2022, when another incident had occurred involving myself and DeadThing, which will be discussed later in this letter, then at least by February 23, 2023, when Senior Developer messaged me in regards to the leads and senior developers discussing said incident. 2. In sending this to me, I felt as though Sploink was insinuating that I have the mental capabilities or emotional strength of a child. Others on the server have seen this message in a similar light as I did. 3. I believe that, given my prior experience with them, they would not have responded to a message like mine in the way that they did if I were somebody else. For those reasons, even if it wasn't the intention of the message, it came across to me as though this message was belittling to me for my neurological condition. Section 2. Other transgressions. I want to clarify that if this were the only incident, I would not be writing this letter. However, 1. This is not the only time that a team lead has made an offense against me in regards to my condition. 2. I am not the only person to whom a lead has belittled in regards to their condition. 3. Sploink is not the only person who has committed said offenses. In this section, I would like to first highlight what else has been done against me, then highlight what has been done to other neurodivergent members of the team by leads in the past, and finally put in some opinions and concerns I have gathered from other users anonymously. The first time there was an incident involving myself was with DeadThing, and had occurred on the November 6th, 2022 playtest. During the end of the playtest, we had been discussing the issue of how armor should work in future versions of the mod, and I had suggested that instead of having 3 separate armor types that each absorb a percentage of damage based on which type, that we should instead remove the 3 separate types and make the armor take all of the damage first before switching over to the player's health pool. In describing this, I specifically referenced how the suit shield works in Halo Combat Evolved, so that others in the call at the time could have a more concrete point of reference to what I was describing. Upon me finishing my explanation for my potential solution towards the issue with the armor system, DeadThing proceeded to ignore my suggestion and feedback entirely, and instead focus on the amount of time it took for me to explain my suggestion, stating, and I quote, "I'm going to be honest, that took quite a while to get to that point," followed by laughter. Hyperverbality and struggling to find proper ways to describe things while speaking are common symptoms of ADHD, and ones that I struggle with frequently. So upon realizing that DeadThing had chosen to ignore my feedback and instead not only focus on communication problems I am not able to control, but openly poked fun at them, I responded immediately by pointing out that I can't prevent my neurodivergent behavioral quirks, saying, "I'm not going to suddenly become less neurodivergent for you, so suck it up." I follow this up by reiterating that I am hyperverbal and cannot control it, to which DeadThing responded again by saying, "I'm just asking you to summarize it," something that I had just explained my incapability to do. So here's what I think. What if, instead of having 3 separate levels of damage negation from armor,
30 seconds
what if there was only one type of armor and it negates all damage except for specific types of damage? And now when I say that, I am hearkening to Halo specifically. Because Halo, if you do not know, you have armor, and then when the armor goes out completely, that's when you take damage from
I
your
don't
own health.
want Halo armor.
I'm not saying regenerating. I'm saying armor that is the first line of defense for all damage. Or maybe not even all damage. Maybe most
Are you
damage
saying
types,
the
it takes
armor? Are you
all.
saying the armor has to go down first on the health?
Yes, that is what I'm suggesting.
All right. I'm gonna be honest. That took quite a while to get to that point. That took quite a while.
I believe you. I believe that this was probably took a long time to be able to set up the. Or do you mean what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
well,
think you need to summarize those. It's kind of like it kind of. I'm sorry to say, sometimes you could drag on about these, and it's
yeah,
just
well, I'm
it's
not going to
bad.
suddenly become less neurodivergent for you, so suck it up.
What?
Yeah, I'm hyperverbal. That's how I am. It's what I do. I cannot control that.
I was
I'm
just
not
asking to
sorry.
summarize it.
After the playtest had ended, I messaged Dead Thing privately and explained to them why singling out my communication problems while I was trying to give suggestions about the mod felt demeaning and belittling, especially due to the fact that they had laughed at me at the end of it. Dead Thing's response to this was simply reiterating for the second time the same statement that they had made during the playtest in the first place. At this point, I was quite upset with the fact that they had repeated the same thing, quote, "It takes you too long to get to the point," end quote, multiple times in spite of me explaining to them in detail that I am hyperverbal as a result of my ADHD and am unable to control this, and I lashed out, stating, "You might as well have just called me autistic little shit at this point." This was a misstep on my behalf, but at the time, after having been told the same thing 3 times in a row, twice during the playtest, and then again after explaining in detail that my communication issues are the result of my condition and are beyond my control, I felt that Dead Thing should have been fully capable of understanding why singling me out like this was hurtful to me, and their decision to use the statement that they felt as though it takes a while for me to get to the point as an excuse repeatedly felt to me as though they understood that was beyond my control, but did not care because it was annoying to them anyway. They also stated that the laugh at me was an uncomfortable laugh sort of thing, which to me insinuates that my behavior of taking a long time to get to the point is something that makes me creepy or unsettling, which is another notion that has caused me quite a lot of distress both in this community and in others. I want to clarify that the above situation is one that I generally consider to be water under the bridge. However, the fact that it happened and that similar situations keep happening ever since means that it needs to be addressed again. Our next section here is on Apollo TF2. So, the second neurodivergent person on the dev server, aside from me, who has been on the receiving end of offenses and transgressions from the leads and higher developers on the team, is Apollo. The first issue in their case that I would like to bring up is in regard to their Pre-Fortress 2 documentary that they created. During the time that Apollo had been working on this video, they had repeatedly looked to the leads and senior developers, especially Sploink, Deadthing, and Christopher, in order to get the information in their video correct. I have received additional testimonies on this by senior developer, but I can also attest to this fact myself, as I recall Apollo frequently looking for feedback on their project in the server while it was still underway. I also have screenshots of this, which I will be providing during the editing stage of this video, and you should be seeing those right now. In spite of this fact, Apollo states that throughout a 2.5-month period of working on this video and asking for help to make sure that the information was correct, they received very little help from the aforementioned users. Furthermore, after the video's release, some of the same users, namely Sploink, reprimanded Apollo for getting information incorrect in their video. To that end, I ask this. How can one refuse to help someone looking for information only to complain when they get said information wrong? The next issue I have in regards to Apollo's treatment is how backhanded the attempts at their removal had been. I can personally attest to the discussion on their removal from the dev server that was discussed in the developer channel, but I had also been informed that the discussion continued in private channels, where their problems were addressed. Most notably them using the dev server as a sort of hangout space, without them ever having been confronted or spoken to about this. Similar to what was stated in the first paragraph of this subsection, one cannot improve if they are not told what they are doing wrong. Apollo has also expressed their feelings regarding how they have been treated by Sploink specifically. They feel as though, in the time that they had known them, Sploink had very openly and publicly expressed their distaste of Apollo as a person. This includes 4 separate occasions where Sploink had verbally assaulted Apollo in voice chat while they had been playing Team Fortress 2, Pre-Fortress 2, and Open Fortress, such as telling them to shut the fuck up while they were playing. Apollo also expresses that they were openly told that they were uncomfortable to work with, which is once again a common microaggression used against neurodivergent people, especially in regards to behavior that they are not able to control due to their condition. They feel as though they were oftentimes told that they were behaving poorly without ever being given any proper opportunities to improve themselves, without being told that they're only doing it for self-validation reasons. And I should have a screenshot that I will be showing right now. Lastly, there was a separate incident involving Apollo and Sploink that had occurred in the dev server, wherein Apollo had asked for help in configuring Hammer++ for Pre-Fortress 2, and was met not only with insults, but a gif of a monkey on a typewriter. I should not have to explain why insinuating that a neurodivergent user is comparable in intelligence to a monkey is one of the most horrific things I've heard coming out of this community. Nor should I have to explain why it is woefully ableist and a direct attack at Apollo based on their condition. The experiences that Apollo has had from this team has been very detrimental to them and has had visible effects on their mental health. Most notably, they had been apprehensive to be named in this letter, due to the fears that some of the team leads may harass or come after them for allowing me to write their experiences in this letter. They feel as though they were not given the chance to improve themselves, nor were they given any guidance to do so, and they subsequently feel as though they were betrayed by a group of people that they otherwise believed that they could trust. The third neurodivergent member of the team, who has been on the receiving end of these kinds of ableist attacks that I have spoken with, is Wendy. I would like to preface this section by first acknowledging that Wendy was not an innocent user. She would continuously use the development channels for her personal work, in spite of being told repeatedly to save it for the personal work channel, and her claims that she had been, quote-unquote, led on to create the Mac 10 model, only for it to be decided later that another model would be used instead, well, understandable, especially to myself, who had made a weapon model that later went unused due to someone else's being chosen, were unfounded. I would also like to acknowledge that I myself am not innocent in this matter, as I had spoken in length about my concerns about bringing her back in November of 2022, when she was brought back on for a time. However, given that all as it is, my concerns weren't intended to cause the amount of distress that she was put under. In speaking with Wendy about her experiences, I found that she had not been properly and fairly treated in regards to her difficulty in understanding social cues as a result of her autism. And as a result, she does not properly understand the reasons as to why she was removed from the team, nor for the steps that were taken against her. According to Wendy, she saw Grassy Trams and Sploink as good friends, and believes that they were obligated to block her by the other staff at the time. When I had first written this section, I did not believe that the team would have gone as far as forcing someone to block their friend in order to remain on the team, and had concluded that Wendy may have misunderstood the situation. In the time since sending this letter, however, I have learned that Wendy had direct evidence to this claim, and also spoke with Grassy Trams, who now goes by the username Funicular, who had also confirmed that they were obligated to block her by the leadership. Section 3, Additional Messages. The following is a note from Senior Developer. As a person who has co-signed this letter, I want to express my reasoning. I have noticed this behavior has been happening repeatedly. Every time something such as this has happened, such as the cases with Wendy or Apollo, I have spoken with the party and been able to explain the problem and or been able to come to an understanding. I think this shows that it isn't the other party, but rather with how the leaders have handled these events. As much as one can claim that they can't be ableist due to being neurodivergent themselves, that doesn't excuse one's actions. Being neurodivergent does not allow someone a free pass. They do not often try to come to an understanding or to see someone else's reasoning, and often belittle them, whether it be behind closed doors or in public. These are not situations where one can say sorry to the other and expect it all to be okay. This is a deep-seated issue within the leads themselves and their behavior. Most of them believe in the idea of ignore it until it goes away, which is not a good belief, especially within a dev team. A leader should be able to discuss things with their dev team in a reasonable manner. They should be the one you look for guidance on an issue or a bad situation, not the one you would have to avoid disagreeing with so a bad situation or an issue would not arise. I agree with these statements from this developer that has decided to be anonymous for this video. Section 4, Additional Concerns. In total, I and senior developer had spoken with a total of 5 separate users besides ourselves about their experiences on the Prefortress 2 team and how they feel they've been treated by the leads and higher developers. The opinions will remain anonymous in this section. Sploink. Of all users that we had spoken with, all but one had concerns to voice about Sploink in regards to how they act and how they treat others. The most common concern voiced is that Sploink comes off as rude or disrespectful towards other members of the team very frequently. A particular word that a member used to describe Sploink is that they act hostile frequently. Remember that word, because that is going to be very important for the next section of this video. Dead Thing. Outside of my own experience, there weren't many concerns about Dead Thing, although there were a few. One individual had stated that they didn't have much issue with Dead Thing, but that they shitpost most of the time, from what I've observed, and that's a direct quote. Another user felt that Dead Thing was very unhelpful in a situation that they were looking for their help in, but didn't push them out very far. Again, I will be returning to Dead Thing during our next section of this video. Christopher. A somewhat common issue that users had that surprised me was concerns surrounding Christopher. Of everyone I spoke with, 4 people had concerns about them. The shared concern was in regards to Chris acting as if they know more and understand things better than everyone else. Although this concern was not something that I had thought of before, hearing this particular issue did make me think of a particular situation I was involved in where this held true, although said incident was not related to PF2, so I tried to not credit that as an important part of this. And Sour Danny. There was not much said about Danny, although one user stated that they can be a bit intimidating at times. Closing thoughts. I have been a member of Prefortress 2's team since December of 2019, and have seen a lot of the mod's development. In the time that I've been on the team, we've had at least 4 separate lead developers, have had 2 separate development servers, and have released 3 major updates to the mod. It is my opinion that this team has done very well to be a welcoming and inclusive group in comparison to many of our peers. With that said, however, there is no question that the team has its faults, and there is very much a very real and deep-rooted problem when it comes to the fair treatment of many members of our team. When a problem stems from the members in charge of the team, it is very difficult to confront it for fear of repercussions. So I would like to assure you all that this letter does not stem from a reactionary response just to what occurred earlier in the week. But when the people in charge are the ones causing the problem, there is no one for us to turn to address it. Being a leader on a project this large is a very difficult task. Simply being good at your skill is insufficient. As such, there is much more to being a lead than making final decisions and assigning work to others. It requires empathy, thoughtfulness, and restraint to be able to overcome one's personal feelings in order to do what is right for the project. It is my opinion that, if someone is not capable of sufficiently bringing this particular set of skills to the table, that person is not a qualified lead. I have not written this letter in order to call for anyone's removal from the team. The purpose of this letter is simply to voice the concerns that I and a number of other members of the team have had with the current state of the team's leadership. I hope that bringing these issues to light may lead to some changes for the betterment of the team. Signed, Wolfclock, co-signed Apollo TF2, and Senior Developer. I will also say that in the time since, Wendy had also co-signed. My hopes about this letter was that the leadership of the team would acknowledge their faults in their past behavior and change how they acted for the future. On April 25th, 2023, 5 days after I had sent my letter to the team, I received a response from the owner, Sour Danny. The response goes as follows. Wolfclock, thank you again for sending this letter of concern. We've discussed it over the leadership team and shared with the rest of the team that they should never feel afraid to contact any of us over concern or mistake of ours. When I first became project lead, I wanted it to be truly transparent that anyone could discuss any mistakes I had done. Now that we have 4 leads, you've done exactly that. We will continue to promote an open discussion atmosphere and continue to hold people accountable. The relevant leads have now or already reached out to the relevant individuals to reach understanding. Thank you. At the time, I was alerted that there was an announcement posted to the developer Discord by Sour Danny stating the following. Dear team, I strongly believe that a good community is built on trust. When I first became project lead, I made it clear that anyone could bring their concerns to me and hold me accountable for my actions. Today, we are in a new era of PF2 with 4 leads. All of us feel the same way about this sentiment, that our mistakes should be discussed. We're grateful that so far this has remained true. Recently, some previous developers have addressed their issues privately, and we were able to come to an understanding. We will promise to do our best as volunteers, as leaders, and developers. With these statements, I had hoped that the leadership would now begin to work on better communication with the team, no longer discussing things privately and then executing them without a given reason. This sentiment would be proven false 5 days later. On May 1st, 2023, I was booted from the team's GitHub with no explanation given to me whatsoever. At the same time, the co-writer to my letter was booted out of the team entirely. They were not given any concrete reasoning behind their removal from the team. Instead, they were given abstract reasons, such as them being difficult to work with, hostile, passive-aggressive, and other such reasons. You will note that the claims made against this user are many of the same claims that we had made against Sploink in our letter, with the difference being that we provided documentation to back us up. Furthermore, the individual who told them that they were being removed, Dead Thing, not only failed to establish any concrete reasons with documentation to back these claims, but they had also actively refused to allow for this developer to have an opportunity to explain themselves or even see exactly what it is that they did wrong. Notably, this developer specifically requested that they be given a chance to amend their ways, to which Dead Thing had responded with the statement, quote, "I'm sorry to say, but this isn't amendable. Good luck in your future endeavors." End quote. While talking with this developer about what had happened, they stated very clearly that they do not know what the reasoning behind their removal is. However, they suspected that some of the reasoning may be the result of Dead Thing providing faulty evidence against them, with those being situations that Dead Thing had intentionally blown out of proportion in order to make the case that this developer should be removed. Furthermore, this developer was not able to get any more information about the situation because Dead Thing had intentionally blocked them in order to prevent them from speaking to them anymore. A situation that I also found myself on the receiving end of on at least one occasion. To clarify on this situation, Dead Thing has been notoriously and consistently difficult to contact, in spite of the alleged open atmosphere for discussion that the leadership touts. They do not allow for private messages from other developers without having them added on Discord first, and upon finishing a discussion, they seemingly immediately remove users from their Discord contacts. When the first situation involving Dead Thing had occurred, I needed to wait for them to add me just so that I could attempt to speak with them privately on the matter. I have also needed to request them to add me during development to be able to speak about other private matters with them as well. My understanding is that Dead Thing's refusal to allow for open communication has been a repeat issue for many users. I find this behavior by Dead Thing to be utterly despicable, and the fact that it comes not only less than a week after I had sent the team leads our letter telling them that their lack of communication was actively detrimental to the team, but also comes alongside an announcement on the dev server that their decision to remove this anonymous user was made in agreement between all of the leads, tells me that my letter had not done a single thing to change their behavior. On May 4th, 2023, I sent a lengthy message to Sour Danny expressing my distaste to their actions and how they have clearly not changed at all in spite of their public claims. I detailed the reasons why the actions that they took were inexcusable. I pointed out that the claims that were made against this developer were the very same claims that we had made against Sploink less than a week prior, and I explained that, as members of the mod's leadership, they have an obligation to communicate. At the time of writing, it has been 14 days since I sent Sour Danny those messages, and 18 days since I myself was unceremoniously removed from the team without any explanation given to me. Finally, at the time of editing the second revision of this video, on May 24th, 2023, I was finally given a response to my messages. This response further shows the unwillingness of the leadership to amend their ways. It continues the trend of a lack of proper documentation. It provides meaningless answers to my questions and concerns. And I believe the worst offender of it all is that the response contains a plethora of bold-faced lies. Allow me to go through it now, pick it apart, unravel the lies, and explore the hypocrisy found all throughout it. Firstly, there is the case of my excuse behind being removed. I will read this as is. We in leadership have agreed that you should take an extended leave during our hiatus. We feel that, at the moment, everyone needs to reflect on what has happened. We feel that in the current atmosphere, it would only cause more drama or trouble. I certainly can attest that I have had the time to reflect now, considering that it has been well over a month since the initial actions had transpired. I can also attest that I have had the time to reflect upon the newfound issues of the staff's refusal to communicate, considering that this response comes after 24 days of nothing. This will be detailed in an even greater amount shortly. Next up, there is the statement that the unnamed developer was informed of the reason for their dismissal. I have already greatly detailed that this is untrue. They were told that the leadership had agreed to remove them and that they were shown a singular example of an anonymous developer stating their distaste of them. What the leadership did not do was prove any claims that they had made. After this, there was a point where the leads say that the reason behind the unnamed developer's removal had nothing to do with our letter, and was being discussed before the letter was sent. Fair enough. Next, Danny states that since I had sent my letter, Sploink had reached out and amended with the affected individuals. This is provably a bold-faced lie. Apollo TF2 claims that Sploink had never at any point reached out to them after I had sent my letter attempting to amend the issues between each other. The only time that Sploink had ever came to apologize to Apollo was on March 26th. It is not only a pathetic attempt at an apology that shirks all of the responsibility off of Sploink by blaming it on emotions, but was seemingly only sent as a response due to the unnamed developer telling them to do so. I was also never actually given a proper apology after I had sent my letter, nor was there a common ground that we had found. Danny then goes on to state that Sploink would have been demoted had the other leads not pleaded to give them a chance. I have it on good authority that at least several of the developers, and one of the leads, Dead Thing, are part of a friend group amongst each other. As a result, I can say on good authority that Sploink's failure to be demoted is the result of bias and favoritism. Danny then states that the unnamed developer has continued examples of poor behavior. Well, that's great. It's too bad you never showed those examples to them like they asked you to. At the end of the section, Danny states that Sploink is on thin ice. I should not have to explain that that means literally nothing. I'm going to read the next section word for word. I understand you do not understand our decision for removal. Please understand that at this time, unnamed developer will not be rejoining the team. I would certainly love to understand, as you have asked. In fact, I have asked on numerous occasions now to be given the reasoning so that I can understand it. In spite of this, you have refused to do so. And as a result of that, I refuse to understand. The leadership of the team has proven, up to this point, that they cannot be trusted with their claims at face value. They have lied, covered things up, and continuously skewed the view of what has gone on in the development team in their favor. Danny then states that they do not believe there is favoritism at play, but acknowledges that there is a bias. This first message ends with Danny spending approximately the same amount of time that they had spent explaining the reason for my removal to chastise me for my insistence upon a response. They state that they have no obligation to respond to me, speak to me, acknowledge me, or talk to me, and that they do not owe me anything and could always just block me, insinuating that this response is a privilege instead of an obligation. For this, Danny, I'm going to speak to you directly, as opposed to speaking about the leadership as a whole. If you believe, truly, that you have no obligation to communicate with the members of a team that you chose of your own free volition to not only join, but become the owner of for numerous months, and then, when given the opportunity to quit, decide to remain as a member of the team's leadership, then you have no place in a position of leadership whatsoever. You do not possess the will and the talents to perform the tasks and duties that you had voluntarily chosen to take up when you decided to lead this team. When you chose to place yourself in a system of other people, and then you chose to lead those people, you take up a responsibility over those people that will place you in positions that you will not be comfortable in. It does not matter that this is a volunteer position. The fact that it isn't a job does not excuse you from taking it seriously, nor does it relax your duties to the people that are looking up to you. In the same way that joining an after-school baseball team doesn't mean you can just decide to not go to half the games because you don't feel up for it, in the same way that volunteering to donate blood doesn't mean you can just rip the needle out yourself when you've decided you've been sitting there for too long. Just because the team you decided to lead is a volunteer team doesn't mean you get to decide who you do and don't talk to on the team. Danny continues on in the next section with personal things that, for their privacy, I will not read or share. I am not trying to censor out anything of this response that is of substantive importance that addresses my own messages. The section gives reasons behind the amount of time it took for me to receive a response. The next section after this states that I have 3 people other than Danny on the team's leadership that I could message. This, in and of itself, is provably another bold-faced lie. As I previously stated and explained, DeadThing is unwilling to allow for an open discussion, or in the very least, has been unwilling to in all cases that I know of, between November of 2022 and the start of this month, May 2023. This section also insinuates that it is the responsibility of the users to reach out to the leadership in order to resolve problems with them, and not the other way around. This very notion is what caused many of the problems explained in this video in the first place. If the leadership had just spoken with Apollo, Wendy, the unnamed developer, and myself, none of these things would have happened. Everything could have been solved quickly, quietly, privately, and in ways that would have been satisfactory for all parties. But they refused to do so. I had to wring this response out of Danny in the first place. I had to punish the team by privating the videos that I allowed them to use for my channel just to get a response. I had to beg and nag and have other people speak on my behalf just to be told why I was removed from the team. And at the end of the day, the response couldn't even tell the whole truth. It would be unfair of me to fail to recognize that Danny has stated that this response is their own words. I appreciate that I have received a response, but it would be a lie if I were to say that it was a satisfactory one. As a result, I am no longer willing to be patient, as they have kept asking from me. When I chose to leave the initial situation I had with DeadThing be, in spite of the fact that they had clearly not made any changes to their behavior, that was me being patient. When I chose to take a leave of absence from the team when Sploink had insinuated that I had the intelligence of an elementary school, that was me being patient. When I wrote my letter and chose consciously to not call for the removal of anyone from the team, despite having every reason to, given what was in that letter, that was me being patient. And finally, when I chose to confront the team privately about this situation, and about me being removed from the team without them giving me as much as a single message, that was me being patient. My patience regarding the situation, however, has dried up. I am no longer going to allow the bullies in their positions of leadership mistake my patience for vulnerability. In my letter, I stated that I was not calling for anyone's removal from the team. I can no longer stand by this. I am now calling for DeadThing and Sploink to be removed from their positions of leadership on the team immediately. As members of the team's leadership, they have greater obligations to perform than simply that of developing the mod. Obligations that they have failed to perform or even recognize. As a result, they absolutely cannot remain in the positions that they are in. Anyone can be a programmer or a gameplay designer. It takes significantly more than just the knowledge in your given field to be a leader, and they have proven time and time again that their abilities are inadequate given their roles. So, what can you all do to help us? Firstly, I would like to ask that you share this video around. People need to know what the leadership of Prefortress 2 has been doing. We cannot allow their actions to be swept under the rug in the same way that it is done so far. I would like to ask everyone that is watching this video to boycott Prefortress 2 until those members of the team have been removed. I understand that this is both a big thing for me to ask of you all, and something that you may believe will not actually help, given that Prefortress 2 is a free mod. However, this isn't at all true. Server operators have to pay to keep their servers up. If no one is playing the game, that is an objective loss of money with no benefit. I can also attest that the mental toll of seeing a mod you've worked on go without players is a very punishing thing to witness. To my former peers who are still on the team, the members and users that have known me, some even for multiple years at this point, it is incredibly difficult for me to make demands from those who I have worked alongside, especially for as long as I have done so up to this point. Over 2 years, for some of you. If the situation were anything less than what it is right now, I would never in a million years ask these things from you. However, if you've watched this video up to this point, You now know the kinds of things that the leadership of the team have hidden from you all. You now know the horrible things that they've done both to myself and to our fellow members that they've tried to hide up to this point. You know the kinds of things that they might do to you if they decide that you're not worth having around. Therefore, I am making a call to action to all current developers and contributors that you resign from your positions until the situation has improved. If the leadership of the team has done things to you similar in any way to what they did to myself, Apollo, Wendy, or our friend who has asked to remain anonymous, I ask that you make your stories known. Tell us in the comment section of this video what it did to you and how it made you feel. Make other videos similar to this one. Do whatever you can to make some noise about this situation. Thank you all for watching this video and giving me your time. I hope that changes can be made from this. I hope that we can make Pre-Fortress 2 a better mod than it's ever been. In the description, I will link that modified version of the letter that I had sent in. I will also make an update if the situation improves. Until then, thank you all for sticking with me. Farewell.